Life and Wisdom Speaks podcast on Laws of Life with your host and Mindset Transformational Life Coach, Barb Cole. This is where we talk about the life cycle from the beginning to the end of time. We discuss parenting, love, family, relationships, and more with special guests from all walks of life. Keeping it real, raw, and uncut. So sit back and sip your favorite drink as we bring you an inspiring hour of deep stories, thought-provoking insight, wisdom, and laughter that will transform your life's journey towards a different mindset. This is the Life and Wisdom Speaks podcast. Here's Barb.
All right, guys, we are live. All right. Hello, everyone. I want to thank all of my listeners, my audience for tuning in today to this live podcast in reference to Life and Wisdom Speaks Laws of Life. I'm super excited to have the dads that have taken this opportunity to be on this podcast with me to talk about their journey as fathers, how they've incorporated being a dad into their day-to-day existence. I'm going to let each one of my guests introduce themselves, but just to give you a little insight as to what I'm doing here and why. Truth be told, I didn't realize it was Father's Day, but this is coming at a great opportunity right here before Father's Day. But I want to share with our audience that, dads play a pivotal part in a child's life in growing up. There's no way around it. A lot of times people look at, the fun part of in conceiving a baby. That's all it's all about. But that's not. It's more to than that particular episode in that journey. Because once you have been blessed to have a child, to bring forth a child, your job has changed tremendously. It's not just about, having a kid. You got to put in the work for that child, because that child has to grow up to become an adult and to repeat that same life cycle of getting out here in the world and doing what they need to do. So I want to share this and share with you guys from the male perspective. I'm not a dad, so I can't share it to you from that perspective. My dad is already gone. He's done his job and he's gone. But we still have dads out here that have jobs to do, and that's what these guys are here to do, is share what it is to earn that title called father. You can be a dad all day long, but you got to earn that. And it doesn't just start at that one time. It goes on and on and on. Dads are at different places in their life. Some dads are not even a part of the children's life. Some dads are already deceased and gone. They're not able to be a part of the kid's life. Sometimes you have to come in. They may have a stepfather that takes the place of their dad. That's okay, as long as somebody steps to the plate. There may be uncles or other family members who are male influences in the family to help these children as they grow in life. So again, guys, I can talk a lot. I'm going to go ahead and stop at this point and go ahead and let my dads introduce themselves to each of you, and then we're going to go from there. All right. And we're going to start with my first guest, my dad, Shane. Can you tell us who you are, Shane, and all this good stuff about you?
Hey there, I am a dad of twin toddlers, and I have an 18-year-old and a 15-year-old. I am a stay-at-home dad. I work from home primarily as an ADHD life coach. And, I have, my kids were born at 27 weeks premature. And so I've been having to deal with all of the ramifications that come from that. And I'm really happy to be here, and I'm really happy to be able to talk about my kids. It's a lot of fun for me.
Thank you, Shane. I appreciate that. Seabrick, tell us who you are and what you do and all that kind of good stuff as a dad.
Sure. My name is Stephen Worthy. I'm a dad of two teenagers. My daughter is 14 and my son is 16. My son's going into his sophomore year in high school, and my daughter's going into her freshman year in high school. So this is a very pivotal time for them going into these next 3 or 4 years for both of them. I'm trying to be everywhere for them. I'm trying to be dad, chauffeur, coach, anything that I need, any hat that I need to put on. I'm trying to be that for them. I'm also a podcaster. I co-host a show called From Fatherhood with a good friend of mine, Herman Trask. And we're just trying to get out there and give the fathers a safe place and a platform to come and speak their piece and share experiences with one another and get better at this thing. So
Right.
thanks for having me, Barb. I'm here to help.
I appreciate that. Thanks so much, Sebram. I appreciate that. And Mr. Fred, tell us what you do and who you are and all that kind of good stuff about your children.
Yes, my name's Fred Scott. I'm a father of 7. I got 18, 4 oldest one going to be a senior, and I just started over recently. So I also coach middle school basketball, girls and boys basketball for our local middle school. I work a 9 to 5. I'm area field manager for U-Haul, and I'm also a co-host on What's Happening with a good friend of mine, Bradley Robinson, where we just talk about kind of any and everything. We do interviews as well, so just taking a different outlook on it. Like I told him, I joined him on the podcast. It started because we're just good friends talking every day at work, and we felt like it should be shared. But for me, I felt like it could be something for my kids later on when I'm gone, when they want to hear my voice. Hopefully these podcasts are still accessible to them.
Right.
And maybe I touched on a subject that can help them through something they're going through at that point in life when I'm no longer here. So that's why I do it, but that's who I am. Thank you for having me, Ms. Barb.
You're welcome. Absolutely. Thank you for joining us. Dr. Greg Wooders, tell us who you are and what you bring to the table.
Well, first of all, please call me Greg.
Okay, Greg.
I'm a husband to Vicky, 24 years, father of 2. I have a daughter who turned 23 today and was engaged to be married just a couple weeks ago. Lives up in Virginia Beach. David, my son, is 19, and he's serving in Cambodia he's a missionary in Cambodia. We live in Eastern North Carolina. On board Marine Corps Base Camp Lejeune. I'm a active duty Navy chaplain, from which I'll be retiring next year. Certified life, leadership, and Enneagram coach. I hold a doctor of ministry from Regent University in Virginia Beach. And I'm looking forward to the conversation this evening.
All right. Thank you for joining us. We're glad to have you. And Michael, tell us what you do. I think you remember, we talking, you said you had retired. So tell us what you're doing now.
I'm a retired police sergeant. I was injured in the line of duty a number of years ago. And my story with my kids is very, very important to me because they helped me walk out of a wheelchair that I was diagnosed to be in. I am reinventing my life into being a podcaster. And I post a podcast called One More Thing Before You Go, which was also inspired by my kids. I have 2 daughters. One is 32, one is 30, and I have a lovely wife of 33 years. She's my second marriage, but she is my love of my life and has been through this journey with me as well. So now I motivate, inspire, and educate other people that there's always one more thing and that the light at the end of the tunnel is always open.
Oh, great. Great. I'm glad to have you on too, Michael. Thank you guys so much
Thank
for being a part of this. I know we talked a lot, beforehand and kind of talked a little about what this podcast is going to be about, this episode. So, and I did, share some questions with you guys that I want to kind of bring up, but I'm going to put one of my questions here and I'm just going to go ahead and read it out to you guys. Tell us what went through your mind and how you felt when you first found out that you were going to be a dad. That might be taking you guys back to a place that, you might be smiling. You might say, you know what, I was in shock. I didn't know what to say, but I'm going to start with Michael. Can you share your thoughts when you first found out you were going to be a dad?
It was the second best day in my life. First one was meeting my wife in order to for her to be able to tell me that. But yes, I was ecstatic. I was actually on duty, and people were calling in and asking me, the chief, while I was outside hugging and swinging a blonde around in the parking lot. And it actually was my wife telling me that she was pregnant for the first time. So
wow.
It was an ecstatic feeling. I really enjoyed it.
That's great. That's great. Greg, it's your turn. Tell me about you.
Oh, so I got married when I was 31. So that puts me a little bit behind the power curve. We were, um, my wife was within the first 14 months of marriage, we had our first baby, who was Liana. I was in the birth room for both of my children. Um, Liana came out perfectly healthy. I remember taking both of them in my arms. Liana came out perfectly healthy, never had an issue. David, they put him they put him in my arms, and then they said, we need to put him under this tent. So then David went off to intensive care
Oh, wow.
as a little one, but then recovered fully and has grown up to be a fine young man.
That's great.
So yeah, I'm working hard not to become weepy. This is one of those experiences I think that any father, there's something special. And I imagine, Fred, you've gone through this a number of times, 7 children. Wow. I just stopped it too. So yeah. I mean, I could go on and on. That's where I'm at with
Yeah.
the birth of my kids.
Well, that's got to be a great experience, especially when you had your son and you were concerned, but it was his season. It was his time to be here. So regardless of what was going on, it was his time to be here. I share with people that birth starts when they take that first cry out and take in the breath of life. That's when their journey starts and yours change, because that's when you have to figure out, okay, I have to incorporate this child into my everyday existence. I can't put him on the shelf and try and get it when I want to. He's a part of my everyday, or she's a part of my everyday from this day forward. And we know when they become adults, it doesn't stop. Matter of fact, you pick up a whole new plate of things that you have to address. So it doesn't change. So, hey, Fred, I'm going to move on and get with you and let you tell us how you felt.
Well, I'm first gonna say, I look at them as all mine, but I took on 3 with my relationship. So,
Okay.
just so you know, when you said a number of times, I've only had 4 natural experiences. So, but the first time I was only 24, 25 going on, and we took a walk on the pier. And I think for her, she didn't really know how I was going to take it, because it was my first child. And I just reassured her, like, hey, we in this together, it's done. Ain't nothing to worry about. Ain't no, extra reaction. It's what it is. You know what I mean? And I gotta stick to it. So,
Right.
and it was a joyful moment. I knew it'd be great for my mom, I made it past the status quo. I made it to 25, and I found, what I'm saying, my fiance that I really love and enjoy. So I think it was perfect, and I always felt that I was going to have a big family because of some influencers that I had in my life. I had an uncle who took on my auntie, who ended up having 7 kids altogether, with my uncle finishing out with the 3 they had. And I always admired him for that. So I seen it coming, I think I want to say from a teenage age that I would have a big blended family. And so fast forward to making it to the hospital on delivery day. I actually was just relaxed, sitting in the chair. My mom made it up, her and my grandma, they sat in for my first child with me. So it was definitely a memorable moment. I almost overslept, but my mom, she wasn't having it. She wasn't gonna let me make it that far into the process without being there. But I was there the whole way, cut the umbilical cord.
Oh, wow.
I seen my defensive side coming in because of course it was my first child. So when she came out and he kind of grabbed her head like he was receiving a hike from a center and twisted. Whoa, hey, So I seen that, off top, that I was like, okay, yeah, It's my little girl, and I see right now, you watch out. So, but that was my first experience, and it was great.
That was great. Yeah, that's that daddy instinct. It kicked in instantly, didn't it?
Yeah,
I mean,
I ain't feel that.
like, oh, wait a minute, hold up there. That's mine. Yeah. And I admire dads that take on the blended family. Like I mentioned earlier, sometimes we have to come in as a stepdad or, uncles or, family members that are influencers that kind of participate with our children. It's all part of the plan. It was like you said, you already knew way back when that you were going to do the same thing too. And you have 7 kids that you are a part of their life. So thank you for sharing that with us. Okay, now, Mr. Seabrook, tell us your story.
Well, I can say that I guess I was excited and terrified at the same time. I remember being told, that she was pregnant. I think I was fortunate. I had a great support system in my parents, my sister, my brother. They were there with me the entire way through. My father just kind of giving me tips all the way through it, all the way up until the day my son was born. And I'll never forget, it was like a Sunday night. And my son he's named after me. He's the third. So to hold him in my arms that first time and look my son in his eye and him having the same name as me, it changed everything. It changed everything going forward. Maturity level, my thought process, career wise, it just changed everything, and for the better at that. So one of the 2 best days of my life, and then the second day, of course, my daughter being born. So I'll never forget that night. That will forever be ingrained in my heart and in my mind. So going forward, and everything's going great so far.
That's good. That's good. You've taken that journey and you moving right along with it. You guys seem to be doing it the greatest of ease. And, that's a blessing to be able to do that. Like I said, some dads are afraid of that journey. They don't think that they can step up to the plate and be a good dad and a good father. But you just got to get in there and do it. It's like, trying to learn how to ride a bike. You're going to learn how to ride it. You're going to keep falling off. But you get back up and you do what you have to do. So we just do what we have to do. And Mr. Shane, come on, share with us. I know you got your little ones and you got some teenagers too, right?
Yeah. I hope y'all don't mind. I kind of have 2 stories.
Okay.
So when my first wife told me about my oldest son, it was a shock because we weren't really planning it. I was 21 years old. I just got done with a whole lot of craziness in my life. I was going to seminary in my church, learning to become an associate pastor. And, we weren't married, at the time. And of course, my leadership team were like, hey, you need to get married. You're kind of doing this thing. And I'm like, okay. And then I was like, oh, you're pregnant. And then my leadership team was like, hey, we got to have this discussion. And I was like, oh, yeah. And so I never had a doubt about stepping up and stepping into it. But it was such a surprise. I was my childhood was, my dad was really abusive. So I had that big fear, am I going to be like my dad, And so there was a lot of fear for me to be better, to live up to a different standard, to push myself to break that cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And then, my second child, she was absolutely amazing. And, I never had any problems with the finding out. It was always a joy to find out. There's a lot of issues there, a lot of mistakes that I did wind up making. But once I met my second wife, we really were going to take our times. We weren't really even going to plan on anything until we got to a certain point in our relationship. We got married, and a few years later, we're getting ready to go to her parents' house to, get ready for Christmas holiday. And she comes in and she goes, hey, I wanted to give you your Christmas present early. I hope you don't mind. I left it on your desk. And she was completely blasé about it. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And so I this is not an abnormal thing. So I didn't have any clue what was about to happen. And I opened it up, and it was that, the pregnancy test. And it was 3 pregnancy tests all lined up, and they all had identical lines. And she was like, and I said, I was looking, are you serious? And she was like, there's 3 tests there. What do you think? I'm like, and I was elated. I was elated. My wife, she's a special needs teacher. She's been doing it for 20 years. She's been my rock, and it's been a joy being in this relationship with her. And so, and then a month later we were like, okay, we're going to go get the sonogram done. Yay. And we kind of announced it to the family. And then, they were super excited. We're going to have a baby. And then we get to the sonogram place, and they're like, oh, that's really cool. You see the head here and the head here. And I'm like, wait, what? Yeah. We both looked at you and said, oh shit. There's 2. And, neither one of us had any. We don't have a history of twins. It was just one of those things that happened, and we were like, oh, and like even to today, every now and then, like they do something really crazy, like spill like concentrated bubble liquid on the carpet 2 days ago, and we're just like, oh, there's 2 of them. But we really started, we have a huge support system, really strong parent figures, really strong, external family influences and stuff like that. And we were getting ready. We had all of our stuff going on. And 6 months into the pregnancy, my wife wasn't feeling good. No, 5 months into the pregnancy. Sorry, guys. She wasn't feeling good, and she was like, "Hey, I may not feel good. I may go to the doctor later on today after school." And I said, "Hey, if you're not feeling good," and it was like 7 a.m. I was like, "If you're not feeling good, go to the doctor." Mm-hmm. And so she went to the doctor, and the doctor admitted her into the hospital.
Oh wow!
And so there was some major issues going on. She wound up getting discharged from the hospital. They were, and they were able. She almost went into labor, and they had they're required by law to have a very frank discussion if the pregnancy is before 24 weeks about the dangers,
right?
And what that means, and what our options are between the 23rd to 26th week. And that was a hard discussion.
Right. I can tell right now, Shane, that right there is still a very sensitive thing to even think about, but they were meant to be here. But the beauty is they are here.
Yeah.
They made that cry. They cried out. They took that breath of life. They are here.
Yeah. They were able. The doctors did an amazing job. They were able to. About a week and a half later, my wife wasn't feeling good again, so she immediately went to the hospital, and they thought it was kind of the same situation. I went up there. I was getting ready to pick her up, because they thought, all right, another false flag, or false, call. Okay, cool. And then the physician comes in, and he's like, okay, we're just going to check you out before we check you out. And he was laughing and laughing and everything. And the nurse who was kind of helping him, she did the check, and she kind of got that funny look on her face, and she goes, "Hey, can you double check that?" And he did the check too, and he goes, "Huh, okay, well, just let y'all know, y'all aren't going anywhere. We're going to get you into the emergency or a delivery right now."
Oh wow!
And it was. 24 minutes later, my kids were born.
Look at you.
Wow.
And they screamed and hollered when they came out. It was
see there, Shane?
Yeah, it was
strong screaming.
Yeah, it was a C-section. They were so small. Guys, they were like 12 inches long and 2.5 pounds each. And, you know, we didn't get to hold them for 48 hours because they had to go into the NICU. And, but they're good. There's a lot of complications that come from that. My daughter has a minor cerebral palsy diagnosis, and but they're amazing. They laugh. They have a lot of fun. They just recently got evaluated for pre-K, so
That's great.
yeah, and they turned 3 on the 4th.
Look at you, Shane. See?
Yeah.
See? You know, we all deal with challenges with our kids. Some maybe worse than others, but they're still our children, and we have to walk through that journey with them because it is their journey. We don't know, they don't know. It's just a part of life. But the beauty of it all is they took their first cry, they took in the breath of life. They're here for a purpose. They have a divine purpose. Don't know yet, but they're going to walk into it, and you're going to help them get there. That's your job. That's your job. Okay, guys, this is my next question here for you. What do you see as some of the biggest challenges to parenting today? I want to ask you guys that, and I know you guys are going to see this in different places because you're at different places of you know, raising your children. But I'm going to start out with Greg, and you can kind of tell us where you are with that or what you've seen.
Yeah, so, well, I can tell you that. So my crowd that I work with in my professional life is in the age range of my children. 18 to 25 is the median age of the enlisted military. Well, actually, all of the military, officers included. So I think with my kids, I think my son especially struggled with social media. You know, everybody's life is perfect, and it's amazing how grand whoever it is that you follow, how everything that they post is about something that's going great in their life. What never gets posted is the challenges of their life. So all we ever see is the best, and I think so. I think there's a lot of challenges with they don't, a lot of times they've grown up, and I think the last 2 years with the pandemic exacerbated this. They've grown up without social skills and without you know, I grew up, my mom sent me out the door. I went outside and I didn't come home till, he said, just be home before dark. Now it's almost like you got to push your kids. I had to push my children at different points in their life outdoors. There's a different way that they respond to authority. I served in the military at a younger age, and I've come back now, and so I've seen the environment. Well, this is going to date me 30 years ago when I came in the service, and then now as I've been back as a chaplain, I've seen it. I've seen the difference in the way that the young people respond.
Right.
Everything's very quick. Media is very quick, and they're used to these really, really fast moving online, and even on TV shows. It's very, very quick. They know so much. There's the information deluge that we live with today is. I mean, I grew up with my dad got a newspaper in the morning, we got a newspaper in the evening, and we watched the evening news, and that's where we got our news. And maybe once in a while the radio would be on. Now it's 24/7 news. So there's no question about how much more they know than what we know, and I don't know if that's always a good thing for them.
Correct.
I think they lose their innocence too young.
Early. Steve, I'm gonna get you to chime in on that question too. Steve?
You know what, Barb, is one of the biggest. Yes.
Okay.
One of the biggest difficulties I believe, or the challenges, is a lot what Greg was just saying. Social media makes it difficult to be that main source of information that you would like your kids to have before they hit the world, before they hit everybody else. You like them to get your perspective on things and have a little bit of understanding of things before they come home and kind of give it to you. And that's usually not how it goes at this day and time. They usually come home with something that you didn't think you were going to broach at 13, 14 years old, but you're going to have to sit down and have that discussion. it's been a lot of difficult questions and conversations that we had that I didn't think we were going to have until later on down the road, and just not the case. So with the temperature of what's going on and the unfortunate situation what happened in the school a few days back, and it's just you really should never have to fear about your kids going to school, but nowadays you do. So you really try to arm your kids with as much information as you possibly can, and hope to God that they're listening and paying attention, and and just do the best that you can. Because, like I said, my daughter has come home with conversations and topics that I just didn't see happening. I just didn't see it coming. And as difficult as it was for me to have those particular types of conversations, I had to kind of take us back and be like, okay, this may not have been something I learned until I was a little older, but for my daughter's well-being, I think it's something that we need to talk about. So you have to kind of make that call, make that decision, and do the best you can to arm them with everything that they need in this world today.
Right. You said a mouthful, because again, it is your position as the father to step to the plate and help guide them, because the streets will teach them one thing, social media will teach them one thing, the peer pressure, the world itself will show them so much till they can't be but confused. So I feel like we, as the parents, that is our job. You can't be intimidated by it and feel like because they did it like this, they did it like that, I should stand back and let them do what they want to do. That is our job as parents, to kind of give them some direction. Now, there are things that happened back in the day, and I can attest to that we may not be able to do in this day and time because it's not applicable. Back in the day, kids didn't get a chance to be involved with all that. Like Greg mentioned, we didn't have access to all that. You had the TV, and you had some simple channels for 8, 11, whatever, and you had the newspaper, and that's where you got it from. So with that, you got what you needed from your parents. You sit down and have a conversation at Sunday dinner. I have to share that with my daughter. On Sundays, when everybody slowed down and you cooking dinner, sit down with my grandson, I call him Cowboy. Sit down with Cowboy and have a conversation. Ask him how things went for him, during the week or that evening, what happened during the day. Just kind of find out what's going on in his world, because he has a world that he goes out to every day. And if you don't know what's going on with him and what he's dealing with, stuff can just slide under the radar, and you never know about it until it's too late. Until it's way too late. So I'm gonna jump off of that one there.
That's really it.
Go ahead, Stephen. What were you saying?
I was going to say, it's really important what you just said is to ask that question. Sometimes after, I was saying it's really important to ask that question, how everything is going. I remember asking that question sometimes just after a normal day of school, and I ask it all the time. And some days it's nothing, and then some days, they're chewing my ear off. They're telling me all kind of different things just because I asked that question. So it is important to ask that question.
Absolutely. I think sometimes the children are afraid to open up because in the back of their minds, they know something that they've experienced is not right. So they're uncomfortable in talking about it. And like I talked to Cowboy and my granddaughter, I call her Cindy Lauper. They all got their own little, cute names, I call them. And I'll ask them what's going on, but I have to come to them in a way that I'm not being the grandmother. Because if I come across as being the grandmother or the authority figure, they will not open up. I have to come to them in a way, say, girl, what happened today? Did you have a day at school? Tell me about it, blah, blah, blah. And the same thing with Cowboy, what happened at school? What did you have for lunch? So he loves to eat. When I talk about lunch, that opens up the door. Once he talk about what he ate for lunch, then he'll start talking about everything else. But you got to find that place where they're most comfortable and they feel like talking to you and sharing what's going on in their world. So thank you guys for sharing that. So, hey, I'm going to jump over here to Michael. Michael, did I ask you this question yet? I don't think I have.
You have not.
All right.
My perspective on it might be a little, I guess, different. I had the advantage, and my kids had the advantage. They won't probably admit this as an advantage of growing up in a law enforcement environment. So they grew up with me being a law enforcement officer, Their godparents were in law enforcement. Most of the individuals that we associated with were law enforcement or firefighters. So it's just like with Greg, we had our first kid when I was 31 years old. So at that time, um, social media wasn't really around and wasn't up. So and growing up in a dysfunctional family myself, and the job that I was in and working in domestic violence task force for a number of years, it taught me the importance of communication. So with what Severin said and Greg and Shane and you, and I'm sure everybody on this panel, communication is a key to success in helping your kids understand, thrive, and move forward. So from our perspective, the challenges our kids grew up with were a little bit different than the ones growing up today, because they weren't influenced by social media. They were influenced by schools. They were influenced by peers. They were influenced by that atmosphere or television, or what we communicated around the dinner table. Um, I think that the challenges that have grown out of the pandemic and grown out of the violence, the gun violence, and everything that's taking place in today's society, that really has an impact on these children's lives at such a point that sometimes they don't know where to turn, or they don't know how to ask, or they don't know what to ask. So I think those kind of challenges have presented themselves. But from my perspective, I've learned that communication is still a key factor in helping your kids through that, because no matter what age they are, again, I said earlier, my kids are 32 and 30. They still are afraid. They are still nervous. They are still unsure of their decisions. They are still struggling. They are still trying to make a living. They are still trying to move forward in a relationship. So those challenges grow as they get older.
Correct.
So yeah, like you said earlier, you're once a parent, you're always a parent.
That's right.
We have constant communication with our kids. I talk to our both my daughters on a regular basis, if not every day, just to make sure they're doing okay mental health wise, they're doing okay physically, they're doing okay financially, and that's just stuff that I had learned, and they paid that back to me tenfold, which we'll get into later. But um, the family environment, I think, it is the best support system in the challenges that are presented with them today in communication.
Right. That was great, Michael. Absolutely, it was great, because you hit it as well. Everything that you said, it resonates with us here and a lot of other parents that are tuning into this episode here. It definitely resonates with that. And you're right. Just because they're in their 30s don't mean it's over. It's a whole different slate of challenges that they deal with, and when they deal with it, you deal with it. You can't say, well, you're grown now, bye. No, it doesn't work like that. Matter of fact, my adult kids call me more. They call me more, and I do talk to them every day. And I had to tell them today is not a good day. I'm busy. I'm busy with the dads. You guys can tune in, but I'm busy today. But every day they have something that's going on that seems to be so challenging to them. And I sit back and think, like, did I do that? You know, did every day, did I have to wear my mom and dad out with things like that? I guess I did, because my dad was always there for me. He was a strong person in my life. He taught me a lot. My dad taught me at an early age how to handle the budget. I remember as a kid growing up, and he said, Barb, I need you to, sit down here. It was a Friday, and that's how we did. We sit down on Fridays and go over the budget because he'd get paid. He said, did you sit down here and figure out what bills to pay? And I'm looking at him like, I'm not but 12. I don't want to do this. And he said, I want you to sit down and learn how to handle the budget. I was hot, irritated, but in that day and time, you couldn't let your parents know if you were irritated with something. You roll with it. But I learned at an early age how to take ownership of things and do things that really was all part of my journey. It has helped me it's helped to define who I am as a person today. I am very structured, very structured. Sometimes people probably get irritated with that because I'm so structured, but that's how I flow. And if things are out of order, it doesn't set well with me. It's just like my house. If my house is out of order, it doesn't set well with me. I had to put it in order to be able to put my life in order, to put things in order. So I share that with my kids. Let's get things in order so we can move forward. So I'm gonna get off my soapbox again, and I'm gonna jump over here to Shane and let Shane tell us what he sees some of the biggest challenges to parenting today.
All right, so you're going to hop off your soapbox. I'm going to jump on mine real quick. All right, so I'm going to do my best not to make this political, and I apologize in advance, y'all. Because the biggest challenge that our parents are going to see today is our social structure in our country. We have too many parents having to work 2 and 3 jobs and are not able to be as in their children's lives as much as they need to be. We have lost the community outreach and the funding for social support within the different communities, throughout every major city and every rural city in our country. Our education system has been changed into an issue of forcing the schools to meet a certain criteria for standardized testing to get any funding for their schools. And that shifted our schools' education system into moving away from creative arts, moving away from the learning about civics, learning about history, learning about the various different things that we need in our lives as we get older. We don't have as good a system for home ec. You remember? I think all of us are old enough to remember home ec.
Yeah.
We don't have, the schools don't have any incentive to have those kind of courses. They don't have any of the incentives to learn about the stock exchange or our government and how it's ran and how it's supposed to run and what our Constitution says. They don't have that same incentive for that because the schools now have to focus on making these reaching a certain grade level on the standardized testing from elementary all the way through school. Our schools don't have recess. Our schools don't have psychological and health professionals who are able to be on staff to be able to help students who have ADHD or autism or special needs get the support that they need. There's nobody that's able to there's no social support for kids who are going through abuse, whether that's sexual, whether that's physical, whether it's mental abuse at home. There's no support for our kids, and they're being thrust into the situation where there's nothing but information being shoved down their throats and no way to be creative.
Right.
There's no way to express themselves. There's no way for them to have an adult in their life that they can trust to be able to ask those questions. Because again, a lot of our parents are having to work 2 and 3 jobs just to survive, much less be able to give their kids the attention that they need.
Right. Right.
And so that's the major struggle that a lot of people are facing as far as that's concerned. We have, and again, I'm not going to try to make this political, but we have too many systems in place to punish our children and not enough systems in place to support our children. We have too many systems in place to that instead of educating our kids about themselves and teaching them how to learn about themselves and teaching them problem solving and critical thinking, we're shoving rote learning into their faces and not giving them the resources to think for themselves.
Right.
And since there's no parents that are able to do that at a certain level, then the people who need the most are being left further and further behind. And so now we're dealing with socioeconomic situations where people in poverty are getting further and further behind and aren't able to get out of poverty. And then their kids aren't able to get out of poverty and they're stuck. And then all of these cycles of abuses that a lot of us, a few of us grew up in
Mhm.
are now being made worse because none of these children are able to break that cycle of abuse because they don't know any
They
better.
don't know how. They don't know
You
how.
know, they never learned about it. They don't have the resources outside of their home
Mhm.
or in the schools to be able to sit here and say, I'm dealing with this. And you know, we need to be able to step back and allow parents to be parents. We
Mhm.
need to step back and allow the education system to actually show and teach and support our children.
Right. And
And
compliment the parents. Compliment the parents what they're trying to do.
right. And we need to make sure that the parents are just as involved in the education system,
Mhm. Right.
and they can't be. There's at a certain level of income, there's no way for parents to be involved, and so the people who are making the decisions within our school system, at a certain level, don't live in poverty, and
Mhm.
so they're disconnected from the
They don't understand.
problems.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
they're disconnected from the problems that people in poverty, minorities, and people who are marginalized deal with.
Right.
And there's such a divide between the different, and I'll say classes, and I don't mean it in a negative way, but there's too much divide between the two, between the different financial classes that we deal with. That it's getting worse and worse. And if there's not a major change, then
Yeah.
it's not going to get any better.
It continues to do what it's doing. So thank you so much, Shane, for sharing that with us. That was great information to share. So I'm gonna jump over to Fred and let Fred answer the same question as well. Fred, what do you see as some of the biggest challenges, that are to parenting today?
A lot of it, for me is trying to get them to understand that um, just because they peers isn't doing something or don't have to do something or don't have to learn a certain thing doesn't mean it's right or necessarily it's wrong. They always want to size their self up with their sibling or their
Right.
peers and try to make everything, about being even Steven and,
Right.
having to make them understand that hey, life ain't fair. Everything don't,
Hmm.
just happen or, is given to you or, you know, some things it's not for now, but it's to prepare you for later. And I don't expect you to understand that now, but to know that, I'm just doing or have your best interest at heart, because sometimes they can look at their peers and feel like their peers is the one that's looking out for them or the ones that's, helping them when in actuality and reality of when you get older, you're actually hurting them, or they're always looking up to someone older that they feel like is doing what they want to do or have what they want to have, and that's not always the route to go or the space to be in. And Greg said it early, social media is just a highlight reel. Is just really just showing all the wins and not the struggles or what you have to go through to get there, the dedication or determination that it takes to overcome the obstacles that come your way with just everyday life, not
Correct.
just going after what it is that you believe in. But I think the biggest thing right now, and I think I'm looking at it because the bulk of my kids are teenagers right now, and the other half that are still babies. We're hoping that we're guiding and teaching them in the right way, and that they're not picking up things from the older siblings. But it's mainly about trying to guide those older ones that's one day going to be adults out here, and have to conduct themselves amongst others, and that they do it in the right manner, and that you don't have to get a phone call or get just any type of call that could be life changing, and that's what I think ultimately we're trying to prepare them for is things that could be life changing that they don't think of now or feel that it is of importance at this age.
Right.
So, and that's the biggest thing in parenting, just trying to show my kids, just the basics of how to cook, how to clean, how to just take care of themselves, finance and money, how to create, when it's not someone giving it to you or taking care of it for you.
Correct.
You don't want them to be handicapped, as you would say, if you're not here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I think, the biggest thing of getting them to see, because it's one thing to tell them, we always going to be rich. We're always going to, go out here at 18. None of this that you're talking about makes any sense. Like, y'all just don't have it figured out. We got it figured out. We was once them same kids. And yeah, here we are still trying. It's all trial and error. There is no, specific way to do it. If it was, we all would do it.
Right. That was great, Fred. And I know you, that's a challenge for you because you have kids at different ages. And like you mentioned, the older ones, they do watch the younger ones. That's always the case. They
All the
always
time.
watch what big sister or big brother is doing, and they try to do the same thing. I watch my grandson watch his big brother, and sometimes they clash. Because every child is different. There's no cookie cutter. I don't care if they have the same parents or not. There's no cookie cutter with each child. And they watch everything they see their big sister and brother do or their siblings do. And it's just the nature of, the world we live in, children, parenting and all those kind of things. So thank you for sharing that. And I have another question I'm going to piggyback on here, and I'm going to ask you here. I'm going to remove this other one. Give me one skill that you can share with other dads that you have implemented that have made a difference in how your kids act and respond to you as their father. What have you done that you see? Because things where you came up were different. You may have taken something from when you was a kid coming up, and you may see that you can use that now and tweak it a little bit. And it does make a difference with you and raising your children as a dad. But if you can give me one thing that you see that has helped with your kids, that they respond to you as their father, and they respect and they accept that. Because a lot of kids, they challenge you. They don't want to hear what you got to say. They call you old fashioned, or that's back in the day, you're old fashioned. My friend's dad or my friend's mom, they this, they that. But just share one thing with me, Shane. I'm gonna let you start with that one.
My oldest son said "Okay, Boomer" to me one time, and I'm only 40, guys. It made me feel real bad. The one thing that if I can sit here and make any suggestion to anybody about how to parent is, for me, growing up in a childhood of abuse, it was super important for me to break that cycle. And with my first two kids, I made a lot of mistakes. I was a workaholic, and I wasn't able to be as involved in their lives as I wanted to be. And then when the divorce happened, it simply got worse and worse. As I've gotten older, and with learning from my wife, who has all of this experience from kids, the thing that I've learned the best is gentle parenting. And that's a system of parenting where you don't spank, you don't do anything that's going to harm your kids, because now we know that spanking, even light spanking and stuff like that, causes brain damage. It causes unhealable trauma to children's brains. And what that means is you have to relearn how to parent, especially if you were in my circumstances, and no offense to any of the older people, especially in the circumstances where most of us grew up in. And, you have to provide a different type of structure. You have to make your kids understand that you are safe and that they can come talk to you. You talked about, Miss Barb, that, that at some point they have to figure out that, you're talking to them as their grandmother and not the authority figure. In my world, there can't be any difference between the two. They need to understand that I am both authority and safe, because I don't punish you for making mistakes. We learn from them.
Right.
I don't arbitrarily punish you if you do something that's fairly age appropriate and you don't know any better. It's a learning opportunity. It's a thing for us to talk about. But then there's also, the aspect of now you still have to provide structure. You still have to provide discipline, and you still have to provide um, um, consequences for the actions that they make. And
Correct.
some of those need to be natural consequences. Oh, don't jump off the table. Oh, you jumped off the table. Oh, now your nose is bloody. And so they have to kind of learn how to learn from the mistakes that they make as well. And your job is to teach them that, is to show them that those consequences mean that.
Right.
And then there's the real world consequences where you have to put them in timeout. You have to figure out alternatives to punishment so that it actually means something to them. Especially if they have ADHD. With ADHD, there's a whole nother level of how you have to figure out. And the biggest part of gentle parenting is learning how they're communicating with you. Behaviors are communication. It's the behaviors that we see are them trying to communicate something to you that they don't understand how to communicate to you. And their brains have reached a point in frustration of not being able to communicate with the person who they're supposed to be able to trust, that they don't know what else to do. And there's a snap there. There's a break there, and they just react. And that's been the hardest one for me to learn. Is when my son is super frustrated, he screams and yells. I can't let my frustration out like that.
Right.
I have to sit here and give him the options and the tools to be able to tell me what he's wanting. We have a board up in our house where all he has to do is point at a picture, and then he can sit here and, oh, you need this toy, or, oh, your sister's doing something to bother you.
Right.
And you've got to open up the ways that they're trying to communicate and give them as many options as they can.
Right.
And as you do that, and they are learning that you are trying to communicate with you or with them, then there's a safety that happens there. There's a trust that happens there. There's a respect that you build there. And then when those hard questions get asked later on down the road, they know that they can come to you and have that discussion, and that you're going to talk to them and listen to them.
Right.
Because you've shown it repeatedly over and over all of their life.
Right. And some parents
And
have difficulties with that. They react, and they don't realize their reaction is really causing their child to take it inside. It goes inward. They don't want to express what they're dealing with because they feel it's going to cause a problem. The parent's going to be mad at them, so they don't talk. They don't say what they're dealing with. So you brought about some good points there, Shane. So I'm gonna jump over to Seabram and ask the same question as well. Let him answer that question as well.
Well, I think one of the biggest tools that I could offer another father would be to not just utilize your good qualities, but to utilize your bad qualities as a teaching tool as well. Their mother and myself are not together. We haven't been together since the kids were young, and there was a lot of behavior and different things that went on. Just wasn't good at all. Our communication wasn't good. Just a lot of things that I regret at this point in my life. So my kids were around to see quite a few of those different things. So stuff dealing with that. Maybe I got upset. Maybe I could have been in traffic and yelled out and been upset about something. Somebody cut me off. I always try to ask my kids, so, did you see what Dad did just a second ago? Like, how could you have done that better? How could we have done that better? Because a lot of times we lean on all our positive traits and we try to give all that to our kids, when in all actuality, if they are our kids, a lot of those negative traits, they're going to have those as well. And we're not giving them the tools to be able to navigate those things at the same time. So the things that I'm doing also, because I'm a human being just like everybody else, like we all are, we're going to have episodes and things that may not have went the way that we wanted it to go, or something that went wrong, and we may feel embarrassed or feel a certain type of way about that happening in front of our children. But we can actually use that as a teaching tool and ask them, did you see what I did? And kind of talk through that. Like, how could we have, done that
Right.
differently? How could we have reached a different outcome and maybe come to a better outcome than what dad did? I'm trying not to be afraid of shining a light on some of my bad qualities and letting them know, if you happen to have some of these same qualities that I have, good and bad, this is a better way to navigate through those things instead of just trying to ignore them and act like they don't exist, because we all have them. So if there's anything that I could pass on to another father, it would be to utilize the good and bad of yourself, because it really will help them navigate through life.
Right. That's good, Seagram. You're right. You have to, let them know that you're human too. Dad does not do everything correctly.
Right.
As our children learn, we're learning right in the midst with them, because every day is a new day that we're learning something new. There's not a day you don't learn something new. If you're not learning anything, I don't know what's going on with you, because if your eyes are open and you pay attention to what's going on, you're going to learn. So thank you for sharing that. So I'm going to move right over to Fred and let him answer that question. I don't think I've actually asked the question yet, Fred.
No, you haven't.
All
And
right.
it's going to be, similar to Sebring, but I think in the emotion aspect, I try to show my kids all emotions. Growing up, oh, men don't cry. Oh, you're supposed to hold that in and deal with it. Or I try to let them see every emotion come out of me. So whether I'm mad and angry, okay, it's not the right way to deal with that. You know what I mean? There's probably a better way I could have dealt with that. I didn't maybe have to lash out. I didn't have to yell this time. I didn't, but I want y'all to understand that I'm still human. I'm still the same way y'all get frustrated. If y'all need a moment to yell, say, hey, look, I just need a little moment. I don't care if you go outside, you go to your room. Sometimes you need that. You need that outlet.
Yes.
Just to just scream and come back to it and say, all right, you know what? I could talk a little bit, or
Right.
I got something to say, or I want to share. And, along with emotion, being opinionated is still having emotion. I think sometimes we, are afraid of the opinions that our children have because of the emotions it may stir up in us, because we may be guilty of what they are saying, or, we may have grew up an old way where we weren't allowed to express that opinion or emotion. And, that it caused, that emotional trauma within, where they feel like they can't release nothing. They can't, say anything because, no matter what, it's going to be overheard, overlooked, or, as Shane said, the parent can't be wrong. And I'll tell my kids all the time, I say, listen, it's okay to express your opinion now. Just because you express it don't mean it's going to go your way. You still may have to do what it is that was asked of you, but at least it lets me know how you feel about the situation. You know what I mean? Because it lets me know that if you're in an uncomfortable situation, that you will speak out. And so, but they still have to understand that just because they speak out or say something, it's like being on a job. You could tell your boss, man, I ain't feeling this. You're wrong for this one. But you still gonna have to go do it, whether you feel like it should have been somebody else that got sent to do that job or not. So it's okay, but there's a right way and there's a wrong way, and they got to be able to understand that, because when you get out here in the real world, just because you're emotional and opinionated don't mean you could do it in the wrong way.
That's right.
So just let them kids have that emotion.
That's right. Let them go ahead and express themselves. Yeah, exactly. And I'm gonna reiterate on that too as well. My grandson, he's the youngest. He's very outspoken, and my daughter from that old school cloth, she didn't get that. I said, you have to let cowboys speak up, because he's not. And the truth is, he will not let you not let him speak up. And I said, as long as he's not disrespectful, that's fine, because you get a chance to figure out what's going on in his world. I can't stress that enough. And Cowboy is very comfortable talking with me. And a lot of people say, oh, grandparents are old fashioned, and some grandparents are so lenient because they don't have that job every day. I probably have a little bit of both. I don't have that job every day. I tell them, you made these babies, you take care of your babies. Don't drop them off over here with me. I see you at Christmas or Thanksgiving, but don't think that you have a built-in babysitter, that I'm here to keep your children. I still have a life, and I still do things, and I'm still, inventing and reinventing myself each and every day. So they got that memo. And see, memo is old fashioned. You guys know about the word memo. They call it emails now. But you do have to let them speak what's on their mind, as long as they are respectful with it. And Cowboy has some things that be going on in his head. I have to sit down and just like, okay, I'm gonna let him go with it, because he's got a lot he's got to say. But that's part of him growing up in this world to find himself. They're, as little ones, they're still trying to find out who they are. They don't even know why they're here. They just know they're here. So you can't shut them down. Can't shut them down at all. So, Greg, tell us about yours. What can you share?
Well, I think there's two things I would say. First, I would say, I would acknowledge that I made some mistakes with my son in the way that his personality is very similar to mine. And so we butted heads a lot. I want it to be done my way. David wants it to be done his way. It took me a while to finally figure out that I had to parent him I had to parent him a lot different than the way that I perceived that I should have parented him, or that, I don't know if that makes sense.
Yes.
He was very different than my daughter. She was very compliant. David wasn't, and that's a good thing. David is an adventurous spirit. He's he's a risk taker, and I didn't understand. I'm not a risk taker. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing. The other thing that when it comes to learning, my kids would come to me and ask me a question, and I would always turn it on them. I said, well, what do you think?
Right.
And I would never do the work for them. I would always make them, I said, if you want some help, you need to come to me with something of the beginning of a finished product. You may not be that far into it, but at least I want to see that you've done the work. And I always worked at helping them understand how to find the answers. I think that's what a good coach does. We learn how to ask people good questions that they can find their way to the answer. I think we have to let them be. You've mentioned it, Miss Barb. You have to let your kids be who they are.
Right.
We have different hardwired personalities, and we have to understand, I'm going to learn in a different way than somebody else. I'm probably going to learn a different way than everybody that's in this conversation. So be a student. I think the thing that I didn't do that I should have done with my son is I should have been more of a student of him. David's a great young man. He's living well today. But I regret some of the ways that he and I clashed. And then I wasn't as good of a student of his as I should have been. So what I would say to parents is be a student of your kids and understand that you get to parent each one of them in a very different way.
Right. Thank you, Greg, for sharing that. But you're right. But at the time when you and your son clashed, that was part of your learning experience too. For the two of you, you learned a new way of doing things that you were not accustomed to. I've shared that before in a different episode. As parents, we're not given a manual on how to raise each child. There is not a book given to you at the birthing table. Hey, Greg, you just had your son. Here's this book to raise this son. We go with this as we go. It's as we flow, we go with it, and we learn as we go. I'm still learning. My kids are adults, and I'm still learning. I have a son, and he's not like the girls. I don't expect him to be. All of them are different. My middle daughter, I call her marshmallow pie. She's so soft. I have my oldest daughter. She's just very robust. She goes at it. And she is Cyndi Lauper class because Cyndi Lauper has her own mind made, and she came to this world like that. And it means she has to challenge her mom at 7. That's exactly what she does. She speaks her mind. I don't care how you size it up. I tell my daughter, okay, she's going to tell you how she feels. You guys got to sit down and discuss this. It's just the world we live in. And my son is very much so laid back. I shared with Sean how my son is. He's very laid back. But there are things that he deals with that he internalizes, and I know, and I've learned that he's internalized. His dad passed away when he, was in his teen years, and he has not gotten past that yet. And I didn't realize that until his girlfriend said he talks about his dad a lot. So what that tells you, that children, they miss their parents. They want their dads in their life. I don't care what people want to say and how they want to judge a dad and put them in a category. Everybody's different. Some dads do things differently. We can't judge them. Some step to the plate and they grab this horse and they ride him out. Some go and hide behind a rock because they're afraid. They don't know how to do this. So I'm hoping that this panel that we have here with you guys sharing so much good information. I'm surprised. I'm at the point of tears. I'm getting so emotional just hear you all tell your stories, because it's real. It's good. I didn't think it's going to be this good. This is better than I thought it was going to be. So guys, thank you so much for sharing so much good information. And we can play this over and over again for dads down the road. They can play this again because, like you mentioned earlier, Fred, you hope that your kids can see and hear this. Yes. When we're gone, I feel and hope that this is still here for our kids and our grandkids to listen and pay attention to. So thank you guys for sharing. And so, Michael, I have to let you go ahead and answer that question for us as well.
Well, I kind of reiterate a lot of what these gentlemen have said on this panel already, but from my perspective, I have found that communication is really, as I said earlier, a real key to allow your children to kind of thrive. We made it a point as they grew up to let them understand that they could come to us with anything. And that includes, I grew up with daughters, of course. They could come to me with anything. They could come to Diane with anything, to make sure that they were free to talk. They were free to get angry. They were free to get upset. They were free to get depressed. They were free to feel whatever they were feeling. After they got angry, after they felt a little bit better about themselves, they knew that they always had to come talk it out.
Right.
So that get angry, get mad, get upset, get depressed, get whatever you need, get it done, get it out, but then come back and let's talk about it. So we always left that door open. And my suggestion and recommendation to any other father that's out there is that you should always leave that door open for your children, no matter what, because once that door closes, I can tell you from a professional standpoint, as well as a personal standpoint, once that door closes, sometimes it's very, very difficult to get back open again. So always leave that door open. Always leave the door of communication open. Make sure that your kids know that they can come to you with anything, whether it be financial, heartbreaking, depression, anger, whatever it is. Leave the door open for them to come and talk to you about it. Right. Let them feel it. Let them express it. Let them get whatever they feel. Let them get it out. Right. And then let them know that you always need to talk about it, even if you're mad at your parents.
That's right.
Or mad at your kids. Get mad, talk about it. Get mad, relax, feel better, talk about it.
Right. That's right, Michael. You said a mouthful with that too, because if you have that disconnect, a tall wall goes up and you can't go through a wall. We know that you can't go through a wall. So you're not communicating with your child, or even as an adult or as a young child, and they're not communicating with you. That wall is going up, and they're going to take that somewhere else, or they're going to internalize it. And internalizing is not a good thing. It's not a good thing. So they have to get it off of them. I don't care. You got to talk about it. I'll tell you, if you got to write it on paper, go in there and write it on paper, how you may feel, put it on paper. And another thing I remember we talked about, discipline, Shane had mentioned earlier, I tell my daughters and, about my grandkids, if they're doing something that, that's irritated you, you want to discipline them and really irritates them to no avail. Give them a book and tell them to go read. See, that's old school for me. That's what we did. We had to go read. And so you take them off of their electronics and say, go read a book. Oh my goodness, you're talking about getting their attention. That's worse than sometimes it's a spanking to say, put the electronics down and go read this book. And when you read this book, I want you to write me a story about the first chapter you read. That's a lot of work. They don't want to do that. Cowboy does not give my daughter any problem because he knows that it's called go read a book. Not that he doesn't want to read it, but that's taking them off their game plan right there, Michael.
I got really lucky because I didn't have to threaten to take away the electronics. And they're too old for me to threaten to take them away now.
Yes,
so
yes. Yeah, you did. You did good. But sometimes you have to get their attention. So that's one of the things. So I'm going to, and guys, this is what I do. I always add um, something from the word on all my podcasts. So I'm going to add this one to my podcast here. And it's from Proverbs 22:6. Train up a child in the way he should go. Even when he's old, he will not depart from it. These are things that, we find out sometimes later on. We don't get it when we're young with kids. We kind of just, move past all of it, do it our way. But I still believe, going back to the word, it does work. It does work when we add the word to that. And then I have this next one I'm going to share with you guys. It's Ephesians 6:4. Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. Now, a lot of people don't go with these scriptures, but this is how I always bring my podcast to an end. I give God the glory that He's given me the ability to bring this about and share this with others. So I hope you guys are okay with it as well. So we're getting ready to wrap this up, guys. We have a little bit over an hour, and now the last one here, I'm going to ask you guys to tell our listeners and viewers where they can catch your podcast or your website, what you do, so they can connect with you guys one-on-one. So I'm going to start with you, Fred. So can you share with them about your podcast and how they can catch up with you, what platforms you're on?
I'm Fred Scott on Facebook, Mr. Humble Beginnings on Instagram, and What's Happening is on all podcast platforms. That's WHUSHATTNIN. And that's where you can find us. You can shoot us an email, what'shappening@gmail.com. We'd be glad to, communicate with you, talk with you, and see what it's out there to learn from.
All right, great. Thanks for sharing that, Fred. Appreciate it. Greg, can you share with us about your platform?
I sure can. So my mission statement: I help people discover their true self and God's purpose for their lives through guided conversations regarding clarity, confidence, and congruence between their vocational choice and who God made them to be. I'm on all the social platforms: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Gregory S. Woodard at Facebook, and then Twitter, also Gregory S. Woodard. My Instagram handle is, I'm not very active there, but my Instagram handle is Greg_Woodard, and they can find out more about me at gregwoodard.com.
All right, great. Thanks for sharing. Shane, tell us where to reach you and how people can touch bases with you on your platform.
My platform is all of social media. My business is named Creating Order from Chaos. I am, my website is www.creatingorderfromchaos.com. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Creating Order from Chaos Coaching, and you can find me on TikTok at Creating Order from Chaos.
All right, great. Thanks so much. Sebrum, can you share with us how to reach you?
I sure can. You can look up Firm Fatherhood, one word, Firm Fatherhood, on Instagram and Facebook. And we have our podcast episodes uploaded on SoundCloud. If you want to hit us up, some certain topics that you might want to broach, talk about and discuss, firmfatherhood@gmail.com. Hit us up. Let's talk about it.
All right, great. Thank you for sharing. And Michael?
Thank you very much. My podcast is One More Thing Before You Go. It's a unique conversation about life and death and everything in between. That one more thing, the personal journeys and everything of how you can overcome triumph over tragedy. So you can reach me at beforeyougopodcast.com. That's one word, beforeyougopodcast.com. I'm on every platform that's out there, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, you name it, it's on it. There'll be links to it on the website itself and a way to contact me if you have a personal journey you want to share with me there.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing that. I want to thank everyone for being a part of this today. You guys have shared so much good information. It's been awesome here. And then what we're going to do here is kind of wrap this up because we're kind of gone over the time. But I kind of knew we would go over that because it's a topic that we have a lot to share and more to share. And this is a topic that can really evolve and go into different directions. So I want to thank each and one of you for being a part of this episode today, How Dads Earn That Title. I really appreciate that. And I just want to ask one last question before we go, guys, and I'm going to make it real quick and simple here. What do you feel has given you that in your heart, in your spirit, just, you know that you have earned that title, fatherhood? Give me one thing that you feel, you know, without a doubt, you have earned that. You have worked harder. You've earned that title called fatherhood. Now, I'm gonna start with you, Steve. Can you answer that for me real quick here, sir?
Sure. Yeah. Uh, just the fact that the first thing that I think about every morning before my feet hit the floor are my kids. How can I better our situation? How can I push this forward? How can I educate them? First thing on my mind before my feet hit the floor every day. So they're part of the master plan. I know I'm a father when I know that can happen every single day.
Right. Right. Thank you for sharing that. Shane, can you share with us that one thing that you know without a doubt, you have truly earned that title to be called a father? I don't care what nobody else have to say.
Honestly, this is going to sound super weird. My kids just had an evaluation for how they're doing at 3, getting ready for preschool and stuff like that. And all of the teachers, the psychiatrists, the therapists, the physical therapists, the occupational therapists, they out and out told me, you're doing amazing.
Oh, wow.
And you're doing a great job. These kids are doing so much better with all of the things that you've told us, all the things that you do with them every day. And that, a lot of us doubt ourselves, and being able to be told by like actual professionals that your kids are doing great, it made me really understand and feel like I was doing something right. I was being a good dad, and that was my moment.
That was great. That's great to hear, especially get it from somebody else that's on the outside looking in. So that's good. That's good. Fred, can you share with us one thing that you feel that has really resonated with you in your heart and your spirit, that I know I've earned that title, fatherhood?
No matter what, whenever they look back, they're always gonna be able to say Dad was there. Just to be able to know that, hey, I know my dad. I know he was there day in, day out. They see me 24/7, sun up to sundown. Take them to school, pick them up from practices. I was there. You know what I mean? Not just for support, emotion, financial, whatever, however you want to slice that pie. I was there. In the household on day in, day out basis. I'm right here.
That's huge. That's great. Thanks so much, Fred. You're very much so hands-on. And Greg, I want you to share that same question, your answer to that same question as well. What one thing that you know without a doubt you have earned that title called father?
Well, neither of my kids are in jail. They're both flourishing as adults. And my daughter's getting ready to marry the love of her life. And she, I stood back and watched both of them launch into adulthood, and they've hit it out of the park. And I can't wait to see the next chapter as they grow into their own adult journey.
Right. Yes, right. You got work cut out for you, Greg. All right, Michael, share with us that one thing that you know. And I've talked to you before. You told me about how your girls have got to help you to get out that wheelchair, and that's huge. But share that one thing that you know you've earned that title called father.
I will say that through 8 operations, through a diagnosis of 5 doctors, that I'd be in a wheelchair for the rest of my life, that one thing that makes me know that I'm a good father is that my children didn't blink an eye and were there for me every step of the way, pushing me in the wheelchair, helping me with rehab, encouraging me to move forward, and eventually walking my oldest daughter down the aisle.
Wow.
I haven't looked back since, and I attribute that to my children in their compassion, their humanity, and their love for me.
Right.
That tells me that I'm a good father, because they are there for me more than I can ever imagine.
That's huge. And I can tell that's very emotional to you still today, to walk that journey and know that your kids were there for you every step of the way. Because I can tell you that some kids, when they get grown and go on their own, they are gone that way. And, I have an episode coming up down the road. It says taking care of those that took care of us. And that's important to me, because we have to look back at those that took care of us and feel okay with doing something for them, and not feeling that they owe us anything, or or some type of obligation. We're doing it from our heart. So thank you for sharing it, Michael. And thanks everyone for being on this podcast. Like I said, we can go on and on this, but I think that we've made an impact. We've made statements here that others that have listened to this or will tune into this later, because we're going to continue to share this podcast episode with others. But thank you guys so much for being a part of this Life and Wisdom Speaks. And this particular episode, how do fathers earn that title? And you guys have shown us what you do day in and day out to earn that title to be called father. So thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
You're welcome, guys.
Thank you for having us on. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. You guys make it feel special. So thank you, guys. I appreciate that. So I'm going to go ahead and play my outro. We're going to go ahead and wrap this up. Okay, here we go.
You've been listening to another episode of the Life and Wisdom Speaks podcast with your host, Barb Cole. Thank you to our listeners and sponsors. And don't forget to share and sign up for upcoming episodes of Laws of Life with your host, Barb Cole, and guests, as we all grow towards a new mindset, towards a new you.